You ever wonder how something so delicate could survive in the darkest, coldest part of the ocean? Well, let's talk about jellyfish, because they're basically the ocean's version of a ghost, but with more tentacles. Deep-sea jellyfish don't have a brain, but they've got a pretty smart way of surviving without one. They use their tentacles like a weird, squishy fishing line, pulling in prey from the dark water like a lazy kid with a net. And if you're wondering how they don't get eaten by bigger fish, well, they're basically a floating, glowing snack that's too tough to swallow. So what exactly are we talking about? Let me guess. Jellyfish. Yeah, those translucent, floating, blobby things that look like they're made of glitter and regret. But wait, not just any jellyfish. We're talking about the ones that live way down, where it's dark, cold, and the pressure could crush a car. Like, the kind of deep that's not even on a map. They're not just floating around. They're basically the ultimate minimalist. No bones, no brain, no real organs. Just a blob of jelly, a few tentacles, and a whole lot of luck. But here's the thing. They're not just surviving. They're thriving. In the deep sea, where food is scarce and the water is cold, they've found a way to make do with just a little bit of life. So in short, we're talking about some of the most ancient, simple, and weirdly effective creatures on the planet. And we're about to figure out how they do it. You think jellyfish are just weird, floating blobs? Think again. They're like the original deep-sea survivors, like the internet's first meme. No legs, no brain, but somehow they're everywhere. If we understood jellyfish, we might understand how to survive in extreme places, like space, or your mom's basement, or that one weird dream you can't wake up from. They're like the deep-sea version of a Netflix account. No effort, no cost, and you get a free pass on everything. Except they're not binge-watching, they're surviving. And here's the kicker. They're teaching us how to live in the future. Imagine if we could survive in the deep sea, or even on Mars. Jellyfish might be the key. So yeah, maybe you don't care about jellyfish, but if you care about surviving the future, or just avoiding getting eaten, you should secretly care. So here's the thing. Jellyfish didn't just pop up in the deep sea one day, they've been around for like 500 million years. That's older than dinosaurs, by the way. Evolution's like a slow-motion horror movie, and jellyfish are the creepy, glowing survivors. Back in the Cambrian explosion, they were basically the cool kids of the ocean. No one had a cool kid back then, but jellyfish had the glowing tentacles and the ability to just float around doing nothing. That's the real MVP move. Then the oceans got a little more crowded, and jellyfish had to adapt. Some evolved to be super fast, others got super strong. But the deep sea, that's like the ocean's version of a retirement home, cold, dark, and full of people who don't care about your social life. So they just adapted, got better at surviving with less food, more pressure, and less sunlight. Like a slow, glowing version of a couch potato. It's not glamorous, but it works. And now here we are, in the 21st century, still trying to figure out how they do it. Some say they're just lazy, others say they're the ultimate survivalists. Either way, they're still around, and that's pretty impressive for something that looks like it fell out of a blender. So next time you see a jellyfish, just say, "Hey, cool guy," and maybe throw it a snack, or at least a compliment. They've been around longer than you've been alive, and they've never once said "I'm tired." Jellyfish don't have a brain, but they still manage to live in the dark. They use their light to trick other fish into thinking they're part of a big group. It's like being a ghost in a crowd, but with glow sticks. They don't really see the way we do. They feel the water and the light. It's like if you were blindfolded and told to walk through a dark room with a flashlight. You'd still find your way, just differently. Some jellyfish even use the light to make themselves look bigger. It's like wearing a cape made of light, but in the ocean. They're basically sea life ninjas. They don't need much to survive. A little light, a little water, and a little trickery. It's like being a kid in a candy store, but with tentacles and no candy. In the deep sea, they're like the ghosts of the ocean. No brain, no eyes, but they still get by. They're basically the most chill creatures in the whole sea. So, imagine you're a jellyfish and you're not just floating in the ocean. You're floating in the deep, where it's dark, cold, and no one's watching. You're basically a glowing disco ball in a pitch-black nightclub, trying to make friends. You don't have eyes or a brain. You're basically a blob of tissue with a few cells that can light up, and that's it. But somehow you're still managing to survive. I mean, how do you even know where to go? You're like a fish with a flashlight and no map. But here's the kicker. Your whole body is basically a hollow sack. You're like a jelly donut with no filling. All that's inside you is some stuff that can glow, and some stuff that can sting. It's like a glow stick that also has a tiny, dangerous personality. And let's not forget about your tentacles. Those aren't just for stinging. They're like your main tools for catching food and getting around. They're like a bunch of spaghetti noodles with a little bit of venom in them. So, to recap, you're a glowing blob with a slow walk, no real brain, and a bunch of tentacles that sting. You're like a disco ball that also has a slow walk, and you're doing it all in the middle of the deep sea. Pretty wild, right? Okay, so here's the thing, jellyfish don't have a brain, but they do have the special thing called a nerve net. It's like a bunch of wires all connected, kind of like a pizza box with no toppings. This nerve net helps them sense when something touches them or when they're getting too close to something yucky. When they feel something, they basically just go into panic mode. It's like if you accidentally touched a hot stove, but instead of screaming, they just shoot out their tentacles like a superhero in a cartoon. Except they're not really superheroes, they're just trying to survive. But wait, they don't just randomly attack. They have this special kind of muscle called a contractile ring. It's like if your stomach had a superpower and could squish itself to push water out, which helps them move around in the dark. Pretty cool, right? And here's the kicker, because they're so simple, they can do this with almost no energy. It's like if you had a remote-controlled car that could move forever on one battery. They basically just float, feel stuff, and when they feel something, they go boom. No brain, no problem. So in short, jellyfish don't think like we do. They just sense, react, and float. It's like being a couch potato in the ocean, but with tentacles. And honestly, I think they're way better at it than I am at staying on the couch. So here's the twist, jellyfish don't just float around like sad party balloons. They actually use their tentacles to catch food. Imagine if your dinner was a giant, glowing, floating spaghetti strand, and you had to grab it with your fingers. That's basically what they're doing. But wait, they don't just grab it, they also use their tentacles to sting the food. Think of it like having a tiny, invisible net that not only catches the prey but also gives it a little electric shock. It's like a spa day for the fish, but with a lot more venom. And here's the kicker, they can do this all while floating upside down. It's like trying to eat with your mouth on the ceiling. But jellyfish don't care. They're like the cool kids of the ocean, doing everything backward and still looking awesome. So to recap, they float. They catch food with their tentacles, they sting it, and they do it all while being upside down. It's like a party trick, but for the deep sea. They're basically the original food delivery service. In the end, the jellyfish survive because they're basically the ocean's version of a multitasking ninja. They're like a mix between a squid, a net, and a tiny electric shocker. And honestly, I'd take one for a snack. They're basically the ocean's most underrated snack. Okay, so the jellyfish aren't just floating around aimlessly. They've got a whole science experiment going on in there. Their body is basically a gelatinous slab, with cells that act like tiny batteries, storing energy from the moonlight. And here's the kicker, they don't even need to eat much. They get most of their nutrients from the plankton and bacteria floating around them, like a free buffet in the deep. But wait, there's more. Some jellyfish can even photosynthesize, using sunlight to make their own food. It's like they're tiny solar panels, but with a really weird design. And the best part? They don't have a brain or a heart. They just have a nervous system that's basically a bunch of cells talking to each other, like a group chat with no rules. Quick word from our sponsor. If this sounds like something you'd enjoy, take a look at the Apple AirPods 2nd generation. There's a link and a QR code on screen right now, and in the description below. Alright, back to it. So yeah, jellyfish are basically the ultimate minimalist. No need for a brain. No need for a heart, just a few cells and a whole lot of science. And if you ever thought the deep sea was a boring place, just remember, there's a whole bunch of jellyfish out there, doing their thing, like the universe's most chill party guests. So imagine if your body was like a glowing cone, but you could only move if you shot out little jelly-like noodles from your bottom. That's basically how jellyfish float around in the dark, using their stinging tendrils like fishing lines. It's like if you were a disco ball that only worked when you spun round in a dark room, and you could only spin if you had a remote control in your mouth. That's the jellyfish life. And if you got too close to the light, you'd go blind, like a vampire who's allergic to the sun. That's why jellyfish live in the deep, where the sun can't reach. So yeah, jellyfish are basically the disco ball of the ocean, but with more stingers and less glitter. And they're totally fine with being dumb, because they don't need to think. In the end, they're just doing what they do, like a kid who only knows how to ride a bike by wobbling. But hey, they're still cool, and that's how you survive in the dark. So here's the thing. You think jellyfish just float around like they're on a lazy river? Oh, they actually have a way of being in the deep sea that sounds like a sci-fi movie, but it's real. They basically use their own body to create a current that keeps them alive. Imagine if your body could make you move without you even trying. That's what jellyfish do. They use their tentacles to push water around them, which helps them float and even move in the dark. It's like a jellyfish version of a jet engine, but with a lot more glitter. And here's the kicker, they don't need to eat much. Because they're basically a floating, glowing bag of water, they can survive on just a tiny bit of food. It's like being a couch potato who only eats one snack a week, but you're also a glowing jellyfish. They also use their bioluminescence not just to light up the dark, but to communicate with other jellyfish. It's like a jellyfish version of a flashlight and a phone call at the same time. They flash messages in the dark, like a deep-sea text message. So yeah, they're not just floating around. They're basically deep-sea astronauts with no need for oxygen, and they're way more advanced than you think. And honestly, they're kind of cool in a weird, glowing, jellyfish way. Okay, so the first myth is that jellyfish in the deep sea are like super strong, invincible warriors. Nope, not at all. They're basically the most chill, low-maintenance creatures ever. No armor, no weapons, just a blob of gelatin and a plan. You know what they're really good at? Surviving. With zero effort. They don't chase prey, they wait for it to come to them. Like a food truck that just sits on the sidewalk and waits for customers. No stress, no drama, just jellyfish vibes. So the real myth is that they're tough and dangerous. But in reality, they're like the shyest, most passive-aggressive creatures in the ocean. They'd rather float around, glow a little, and not get involved and fight anyone. So if you ever see a jellyfish in the deep sea, don't panic. They're not out to get you. They're just doing their thing. Like a weird, glowing, gelatinous version of a lazy couch potato. So the first myth is busted. Jellyfish aren't warriors, they're chill, passive, and totally uninterested in fighting. They just want to float, glow, and survive. And honestly, that's kind of awesome. So here's the next myth. Jellyfish don't need to eat because they're just jelly. That's like saying humans don't need to eat because we're just human. Both are wrong, but the jellyfish one is more wrong. Jellyfish do eat, but they do it in a weird way. They have a special bag that acts like a stomach, and they use it to trap tiny animals. It's like having a snack bag that also happens to be a trap. They also use their tentacles to capture prey, and then they just kind of let it float into their bag. It's like a food delivery system with no delivery guy, just a lazy bag. So, no, jellyfish aren't just jelly. They're like living snacks with a plan. And they're actually pretty smart for their size. Or at least they're smart enough to not need to be funny. Next myth. Jellyfish don't have a brain. That's true, but it's also kind of like saying humans don't have a brain because we're not a jellyfish. Both are true, but the jellyfish one is more interesting. You might not think about jellyfish when you're eating sushi, but that's exactly where they're hiding. The kind you see in the market are actually related to the deep sea ones. They're just less squishy. Deep sea jellyfish are like the uncool cousins of the restaurant kind. They don't care about being seen, they just float around doing their thing. And you, my friend, are eating their cooler relative at dinner. And if you ever feel like you're just floating through life, remember, you're kind of like a jellyfish. You don't need to be flashy, just keep moving. And maybe eat some sushi. So in the end, the jellyfish you see in your local grocery store is a distant relative of the deep sea legends. They're both weird, both amazing, and both hiding in plain sight. Just like your weird, amazing, and secretly cool friend who loves sushi. So, imagine you're a jellyfish, but you're not in the ocean. You're in a video game, and suddenly you're hit by a laser. You're like, wait, did I just get destroyed? But now, you're still here because you've got a backup plan. This is what happened to a jellyfish called Tawa who somehow got trapped in a deep-sea video game. It's like a real-life version of a game over screen, but with more tentacles. Tawa had a secret weapon. It could produce a kind of jellyfish bubble that protected it from the laser. It's like if a bubble wrap had a life, and it was also a superhero. But here's the twist. The bubble wasn't just a shield. It was also a kind of trap. The jellyfish used it to confuse its predators, making them think it was a bigger, more dangerous creature. So even in the deep sea, jellyfish have their own version of cheat codes. It's like if the game said, you can't cheat, and the jellyfish said, but I can. And that's how Tewa survived. Not by being the biggest, but by being the cleverest. Because in the deep sea, you don't need to be big. You just need to be a little bit weird. So, the deepest jellyfish, they're not just deep, they're like the rock stars of the ocean, cranked to 11. They live in places so dark, even the light from the sun can't reach them. These guys have evolved to survive in total darkness, no food, and no way to see anything. It's like being in a pitch black room with no lights, no doors, and no snacks. They've got this superpower called bioluminescence, which means they can light up their own bodies. It's like having a tiny flashlight built into their tentacles. But here's the kicker, they don't use their light to find food. They use it to confuse their prey, or maybe to scare off bigger fish. It's like a tiny, glowing disco ball in the deep. And if you think that's extreme, wait until you hear about the one that can live without oxygen. Some jellyfish can even survive in the dead zones of the ocean, where there's no life. They're like the undead of the sea. So yeah, these jellyfish are basically the original deep-sea survivalists. They've got the tools, the tactics, and the weirdness to make it work. Who needs sunlight when you got a glow stick and a will to survive? Okay, so jellyfish can't really die of old age, but they can totally die of being too jelly. If they get too squishy, their tentacles start to droop like deflated party balloons. And if they're not careful, they might get eaten by a bigger jellyfish, or worse, get eaten by a fish that thinks they're a snack. So yeah, even jellyfish have a hard time when things go wrong. They're not invincible, just super slow to die. So yeah, jellyfish are basically the deep sea's version of a lazy Instagram influencer. They don't really work hard. They just float around and hope the world doesn't notice they're not doing much. But here's the catch, if you're not moving, you're basically just a tasty snack for everything from fish to whales to other jellyfish. It's like being the only buffet in a haunted house. But wait, what if you're a jellyfish and you're already dead? Well, guess what? You're still not safe. Some animals eat dead jellyfish too. So even when you're not doing anything, you're still a snack. So yeah, jellyfish are kind of the deep sea's version of a passive-aggressive person. They're like, I'm not doing anything, but I'm still here and you're gonna have to deal with me anyway. In the end, they're just floating, glowing, and hoping no one notices they're basically a snack in a dark ocean. It's like being a vampire, but with more tentacles and less